I'd like to call the July meeting of the Middlesex County Board of Supervisors to order. We'd like to ask Mr. Jesse to open our meeting with prayer, followed by Matt Walker leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us bow our heads in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we'd like to thank you once again for giving us the opportunity to attend this meeting today. Dear Lord, let's pray for the sick and shut in, and also pray for our president, dear Lord. And let's pray for the men and women overseas and help keep them out of harm's way. And dear Heavenly Father, let us make wise and just decisions as we conduct county business today. These and all the blessing in my Heavenly Father's name. Amen.
Amen. Would all citizens of our nation rise and join me in our Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is approval of the consent agenda. Do we have any changes? And if we don't, we could have a motion to approve.
So moved.
I did want to add this
Memorandum.
memorandum of understanding regarding the license to use facility.
And where would we put that?
You could put that under new business.
Unfinished and new business, okay. We'd be adding a memorandum of understanding regarding license to use facility space.
I move that we approve the revised agenda.
We have a second.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So ordered. At this point, I'd like to open the meeting to public comment. Citizens, please come forward. State your name and address and address your board with your thoughts and concerns.
Tom Fegan, Middlesex County. When Congress imposed a 10% luxury tax on yachts, private airplanes, and expensive automobiles, Senator Ted Kennedy and then Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell crowed publicly about how the rich would finally be paying their fair share. Within 8 months after the change in the law took effect, Viking Yachts, the largest U.S. manufacturer of yachts, laid off 1,140 of its 1,400 employees and closed one of its manufacturing plants. Before it was all over, Viking Yachts was down to 68 employees. In the first year, 1/3 of the U.S. yacht building companies stopped production, and according to a report by the Congressional Joint Economic Committee, the industry lost 7,600 jobs. When it was over, 25,000 workers had lost their jobs building yachts, and 75,000 more jobs were lost in companies that supplied yacht parts and material. Ocean Yachts trimmed its workforce from 350 to 50. Egg Harbor Yachts went from 200 employees to 5 and later filed for bankruptcy. The U.S., which had been a net exporter of yachts, became a net importer. U.S. companies closed. Jobs shifted to companies in Europe and the Bahamas. The U.S. Treasury collected zero revenue from the sales driven overseas. Back then, Congress told us that the luxury tax on boats, aircraft, and jewelry would raise $31 million in revenue a year. Instead, the tax destroyed 330 jobs in the jewelry manufacturing industry alone, 1,470 in the aircraft industry, in addition to the thousands destroyed in the yacht industry. Those job losses cost the government a total of $24.2 million in unemployment benefits and lost income tax revenue. The net effect of the luxury tax was a loss of $7.6 million in fiscal 1991, which means Congress's projection was off by $38.6 million. The Joint Economic Committee concluded that the value of jobs lost in just the first 6 months of the luxury tax was $159.6 million. Congress repealed the luxury tax in 1993 after realizing it was a job killer and raised little revenue. Why did congressional dreams of greater revenue turn into a nightmare? Kennedy, Mitchell, and their congressional colleagues simply assumed that the rich would act the same after the imposition of the luxury tax as they did before, and that the only difference would be more money in the government coffers. Like most politicians then and now, they had what economists call a zero elasticity vision of the world. A fancy way of saying they believe that people do not respond to price changes. People always respond to price changes. The only database issue is how much over what period of time.
Tom, can we wrap up?
Yep.
Run over.
Here's my question to you. Do I have 3 minutes? Thank you. Here's my question to you. Is it likely that in the decades since 1990, American human nature has changed? If Congress imposes a luxury tax on corporate jets and luxury items, will Americans behave differently this time? Our property tax here in Middlesex has not grown in value. Our property here in Middlesex has not grown in value since our purchase in 2004, but our taxes are continuing to increase.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public wish to address the board? Please come forward.
Good afternoon. John Fahrenholt from Hartfield. I'm here to give an update on the marine industry, as I did in June, and I told you I would be back each month to give you an update on what's happening in the industry. I spent most of my time the last 30 days working in the Pine Top area and talking to the different marinas and boatyard operators. I want to say that on a positive note, from the boat brokerage folks, boat sales are up compared to prior year. Boats are being sold within the county. However, they're not staying in the county, they're just being sold in the county. And they are moving their boats outside of the county for dockage and marine services. Of course, this time of year, our transient business is up. We have a lot of boats coming in and out of the county for a day or two, visiting Middlesex County and visiting the sites of the county. These transients are both local. Some of them are former customers of ours that have decided to sail up from Yorktown or come over from Lancaster just to see what's new in the county and see the improvements that some of the marinas have done and some of the boatyards have done. And we have had nice discussions about them, and they see the improvements that we're making, but of course, the boat tax issue is still high on their agenda. Again, some of the negatives continues is the boat tax issue. As I related to in my own business last month, we're still seeing a decline in annual slip holders, and that trend continues. Again, I'm speaking of Pine Top only at this point in time. They're just not staying like they have in the past. And like I said, boat sales are up, big boat sales, little boats, but they're just moving those boats, they're moving the boats out of the county for their dockage and marinas. Some of the things that we are doing as an industry to promote the county, we do heavily invest in regattas, we invest in the Leukemia Cup that's coming up, we invest in, the crab feast at the fire department, we also invest in the ballpark down in Deltaville that we promote our businesses through those entities, and we continue to do that, and that's a majority of us. So we're doing everything we can to continue to promote the county. However, the boat tax issue is a big issue. On a employment issue, of course, we are hiring some seasonal help. This time of year, we all do. I have one of my seasonal employees, Fiona, will you stand up? Fiona Shaw works for me at Fishing Bay Marina, and she helps out on the pool and so forth. Her mother is also probably one of the hardest working individuals in the boat business that we have in the county as well, Donna Armento. So clearly things are a little bit brighter just because we're in the season. However, long-term still does not look good for our industry, and that's where we are. Okay?
Thank you, John.
You bet.
I would like to remind the public that we try to hold it, we're going to be nice, but we try to hold this, each comment to 3 minutes unless you're speaking for 4 or more people. So if you're interested in hearing everything you have to say, just get some backup if you need more than 3 minutes.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could just elaborate for a moment, just to remind the public, if they have anything in writing they want to get to the board before the meeting, under a public comment, we can actually get that in the board packet to go out to the board prior to the meeting.
What did we say, 7 days on those things?
I think we like to have everything in by the Wednesday before the board meeting.
Yeah, okay. Any other member of the public like to address the board, please? In that case, I'll declare the public comment portion of the meeting over, and we'll move on to constitutional officers. We've got the treasurer's report, which is a report only on pages 47 through 49. Moving on to agency and staff reports. Do we have anybody from VDOT here today? We do not. So, and I don't think that Dr. Pete had anything real, he had something that he wanted you to read.
Yes, sir. I'm
He's
going
out
to
of
try to
town.
pinch hit for Dr. Pete. Dr. Pete and his wife went to Pennsylvania to see the grandparents over the 4th, I believe, and he asked me to distribute for the board a calendar of the upcoming special events the schools have planned over the summer, and wish to invite the board to those events. And he also asked that I distribute these lapel pins, the school board's lapel pins for the board, and hopefully you can attend some of those events and wear the school's lapel pin. I reciprocated and gave him one of our county lapel pins. Only one, though, because we're a little tighter with those. That was all I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. Next up on deck, we have Kevin Gentry to give us an update on the voice-over IP telephone system that is going in the schools and the county offices.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'll make it brief, but to bring you up to date with what we're doing here at the county. I can't speak for the school system because that's actually happening on a kind of a second track, but as far as the county is concerned, the hardware for the voice-over IP system is in. All the handsets, the servers, the switches, and so forth. So where we're at right now is really the Atlantic broadband piece, the SIP trunks and all that. And I'm going to be meeting with Atronica and Jennifer Nash from Atlantic Broadband on Monday, and probably within the next month is when the big cutover is going to take place. So we're really getting into the project at this point. But everything has proceeded apace. We haven't seen any
No hiccups.
huge issues. It's taken a little bit longer than I would have liked, but we're on track. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions of Kevin? Well, Kevin, thank you. I
Thank
think
you.
the project, from everything I've heard, has gone very well, even if it's not quite as fast as we'd like for it to be.
Absolutely.
Appreciate all y'all's efforts on the task.
Thank you. And I would, Mr. Chairman, like to say to the board today, I just wanted to make myself available. I know all of us have technological issues at times, and one of the things that's been brought to my attention is some folks have had trouble with things from email to calendaring to what have you. And I just want to make it known to everybody, and some folks I see on a more regular basis. If you have any issues with, say, getting your calendar on your phone or your email on your phone, all those things are doable. I know I'm preaching to the choir with Chip because this thing tells him when to do and where to go, just like mine does, because I can't remember.
Next best thing to a wife.
So just to put that out there, if any of the board has any issues, you can call me at any time of day, any day, and I
I'll
will
just
make
echo,
myself
because
available.
Kevin and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. I haven't learned I have not learned yet how to get Siri to do this for me just by talking to her. But keeping your appointments on, if you've got a smartphone, that is just, it's the way to go. You put staggered reminders in there to remind you the day before, an hour before, 2 hours before. But Kevin is just saying anything he can do to help any of us keep our calendars on track, he's ready and willing to do. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All righty, David and Eileen want to talk to us about computer-aided dispatch.
And we have with us today, Mr. Chairman, our Sheriff, David Bushy. I think he's going to introduce them.
Okay, David, please come up.
What they're going to talk about is a CAD system, which is separate off of the 911 system. The system was outdated, and they've done a lot of research. Both of them have been working hard together. And I think with Matt Walker, all three of them came up with a solution, and we really need that to be addressed. And with that being said, I'll let them explain too, because most of you probably don't know what the CAD system is. So, David, Eileen, it's yours.
She's the technical guru. I'll just kind of give you an overview of what we've done. So first off, good afternoon, everyone. We're here before you, as the sheriff said, to talk about the computer-aided dispatch center, known as CADS. CADS is a tool that dispatchers use every day to dispatch emergency incidents, record complaints, and monitor available resources. Our CAD system impacts all of our first responders. It's not just the sheriff's office, it's the EMS, it's fire as well. Our current CADS is at its end of its life expectancy, and it will no longer be supported after April of 2020. The system is based on an antiquated technology and limits our ability to quickly and accurately retrieve data. Anytime we want to do any type of reports or anything, we basically have to print off paperwork and hand call it. The system is so limited because we're using technology that's been 20 years old. It does not offer us the ability to do what newer systems can do, such as reports, as well as building response algorithms. So right now, today as an example, on any commercial structure fire, we want the ladder truck in Deltaville to respond. We want to have a ladder truck go into that larger structure. Right now, that's not built into an algorithm that the dispatcher sees on the screen. It's based on a booklet of SOPs and dispatch policies. So if the dispatcher doesn't have anything to alert them, or it's not automated, so it's a system that does have some flaws. Eileen and her staff have evaluated many of the CADS programs over the past several months. The one they feel that best offers the most and best suits Middlesex County and the Middlesex Sheriff's Office is Southern Software. The total package cost is $147,268, which includes the Southern CAD program, record management, mobile data system, and resource tracking component. Additionally, we will need to purchase 3 new 911 dispatch computers at a cost of approximately $3,000 each. Our computer technology over there is so antiquated that it will not support the new software for the CADs. So basically today, the total funding request that we're talking about is a package of $156,000 to complete the project. Some of you might ask, why do we want to bring it up now? Why don't we wait till 2020? There's 2 reasons. It's two-folded. The first is we would like to only disrupt the 911 center once. Right now, we're in the process of putting in a radio system. Eileen has secured a grant for a new telephone system, which will be going in place in the very near future. If we can put our CAD system in place at the same time frame, we're only disrupting the 911 center once. Secondly is the cost savings. Right now, with the package that we have received, and I'll get into that a little bit, in just a little bit, but we are getting a price at a 2015 contract price is being honored for this system at this time. Southampton County Sheriff's Office issued the request for proposal in June 2015, which was awarded to Southern Software. This was a competitive negotiation which included a cooperative purchasing agreement for other municipalities to utilize. This agreement and contract terms has been reviewed and approved as an acceptable procurement method by the county attorney. Mr. Walker and I have discussed funding options with the possibility of using year-end fundings or year-end savings to fund this project. We are tentatively scheduled to go live with the new radio system within the next several weeks. I talked about Eileen doing the upgrades to the telephone system. If we can upgrade our CADs at the same time, we have built a 911 center infrastructure that's going to last us 10 to 15 to even more, even longer. So the one of the major components in any public safety system is communications. So we've got a solid foundation if we do this, and this last cog of the wheel, if we can secure that, we've got a very well-rounded system. There is an annual maintenance cost. We've covered that from the standpoint of annual maintenance cost is $21,240 after the first 12 months. However, this includes all maintenance and software updates. This can be managed from the emergency services budget. I've got a line item for maintenance. It was used for the old radio maintenance. That's no longer needed. So those funds could be utilized to handle the ongoing maintenance cost of the CAD system. I want you to know that this proposal has been discussed, reviewed at the Emergency Services Committee meeting back in April. It was supported by all of the stakeholders. That's kind of the general overview. I'm going to step aside and let Eileen talk about the specifics of this software and why she and her staff think this software is the best. Yes, sir.
One question, David. The system we're operating with now goes out in 2020. It will just no longer be supported. Is that correct?
It's not supported now.
There's reason number 3 for not pushing up against it, because you could find yourself with nothing.
Yes, sir.
That was my understanding. I just wanted to make that point too.
Awesome. And again, we did talk about how we researched a lot of CAD systems. I'm also 26 years in the 911 business, and in my career I have worked with a lot of CAD systems, so I had a great idea of what the ability is for them. And the reason that we really like Southern Software, for one, they've been in business for 30 years. They've been in business since 1998. The maintenance on it, which he spoke about, which is about $21,000 a year, covers all of the upgrades. So we'll never have to pay for another upgrade. So basically, we're paying for a system, and anytime anything needs to be upgraded, some new technology comes out, it'll be added, it's included in the maintenance cost. So potentially, we could never purchase another CAD system again. I mean, so it's very good. There's currently 73 public safety customers in Virginia with this software. And recent DayPro, which is what we have, or ID Network, offices that have changed over to Southern is Southampton, Carroll, Floyd, Galax, Craig, Page, and Madison County Sheriff's offices have all just switched over, and the University of Richmond PD and William & Mary Campus Police. Matthews County also has Southern Software, and one of the things that you can do with this software is share your information. So if they come up with an MOU and an agreement between the sheriffs, we can actually share information, which is an extremely valuable tool, especially since our citizens cross back and forth. It also supports our mobile data terminals, which we're hoping to get in the future, where the officers can actually see the call that they're being dispatched on a screen in their car. It also will allow them to attach to the Virginia Criminal Information Network and be able to run tags and criminal histories from their vehicles, which takes some of the stuff off the dispatchers. I don't know if anybody of you have been in the dispatch center and seen when they're multitasking and they're running things. If there's any time that we could take a little bit of that pressure off of them, it would be great. The Middle Peninsula Security Center also uses Southern Software, and we will be able to share data with them. The officers from their MBTTs can actually go on there and look up information about some of the prisoners that are in there. But the big part about that is, right now, they're running their fingerprints at the sheriff's office and then having to go book them in, and it's kind of like a double thing that they're doing. They'll be able to do all of that at once. It's one CAD system to where they can book them in at the sheriff's office and then take them over to the jail and drop them off. So there's a lot of reasons for this to be great. Another program that we're starting in dispatch is emergency medical dispatch. And if you're not familiar with it, it's a program to where when a citizen calls and they give us we ask questions that are the same every time, whether you call at 2 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you get the same questions. And it determines the severity of the call, what kind of call, and there's cards that you can flip to, but even better, if you have it in your CAD system, those questions are popping up right there at the dispatcher's eye level, and they can ask those questions. And the best part about this program is being able to give pre-arrival instructions. You know that Middlesex County is big, and sometimes the response times are long, and not due to anybody's fault other than it's a large county. And if we can offer pre-arrival instructions, and in these pre-arrival instructions, we can have them hold pressure on a bleed, we can help deliver a baby, we can help you do choking, and we can even do CPR. And that CAD system, the one that we have right now, doesn't support that at all, but the new CAD system will. And just to throw a little bit in there, I personally think that the dispatchers are the eighth wonder of the world. And we need to give them the tools that they need to do their job. You know, there's an ever-emerging technology in this public safety world, and citizens are demanding a higher and higher standing due to what they're seeing in the media and the movies. They paint a picture of instant location information and abundance of resources. So if we can do this to help out the dispatchers, and again, having the new phone system, the new radio system, which I'm excited about, and having a new CAD system, it would give us a state-of-the-art 911 center, which is a great resource for all of the citizens and visitors of Middlesex County. Thank you.
So Eileen, I take it you're for this?
Mr. Chairman, if I can just add real quickly, the board may recall that last year we used end-of-year funding largely from the school system to help start our project with the voice over IP. What I think is being proposed this year is similar. I talked to Dr. Pete this morning, and at our Budget and Finance Committee meeting, they expect to be turning in $75,000 of unused local funds and $40,000 that they received from additional state funds that offset further local funding. The $40,000 from the state was due to our enrollment projections exceeding what we had projected in last year's budget, which is ideal. We were close, and we'd rather undershoot than overshoot. So we have a little bit of end-of-year funding from the schools that can be pledged to this project, and then we've received additional revenues from our tax increase back in April that would more than handle the difference if the board wanted to move forward.
For those members of the board that might not remember, but I am the board representative to the Emergency Services Committee, and so that's what's given me some of the background on this. But I would just have to say that I think this is the right thing to do at the right time, and the funding is there. So I would open the floor up to any questions.
Yeah, I've got some questions. Eileen, you mentioned that the public is expecting more and more technologically. I would just add, before I ask any questions, they're also expecting us to do it without paying anything for it. So $156,000, obviously, we have to think hard about it, and I think we will. But my questions: do you find that the personnel we have in place generally embrace new technology, or is there any resistance? Or are all of your people just screaming for, can you guys get this fixed?
They, absolutely, all of them are absolutely ecstatic about getting a new CAD system.
Well, potentially.
Potentially.
Are there any grants available?
There are no grants available this year for a CAD system. The VITA grant that I got last year for the phone system, which is for this year, they are not accepting any grants for CAD. They're only accepting grants that support next generation 911 stuff. So.
And you do understand when you have successes with grants, now we've got a bullseye on you, so.
That's okay. I'm working on something different.
Understood. Do we have a CIP for the sheriff's office, where capital improvements that are this big are envisioned and we can sort of plan for them a little further out? Are there more big expenses like this? And it's not meant as a criticism, it's just it's helpful for us to plan just as we do with our stuff.
Yeah, the only thing we have in the future is a building, and that's in the future. I think I'm the last one in the county that is going to have a building one day. So, I mean, we're living in an old building, but we're managing. We have 42 people live in that little building, plus all the other agencies.
Yep.
But the 911 system is, it's like Eileen said, we're putting a lot of money into the radio system, and we got a system that's not going to match up with what we have, and it's going to be outdated.
You mentioned Matthews and our regional jail board are using Southern software. Are there any other counties in the Middle Peninsula that we get sort of that connectivity with?
Well, New Kent's using the same radio system. Most of the ones that are still around us still have their day pro and have not made a decision on what they're going to yet.
So potentially,
We could have
this would
more.
also encourage others to follow in our footsteps?
Correct, because DayPro has sold.
The Day Pro actually sold to ID Network.
Right. And that was who we were using.
And my last question, and I forgive the pun, is this really like the Cadillac of systems, or have you sort of pared back from the very top shelf system? I mean, where would you slot this? Is this the best of the best, or is it just pretty good?
I'd say this is higher than medium, but not the Cadillac, because the Cadillac version was probably $300,000 plus. And I have worked with the Cadillac system. It's a Promoter Premier, so I know exactly what it does. But it's very expensive.
What we're trying to do is we're trying to get even the emergency medical in. And, like Eileen said, our response time for emergency medical sometimes can be 25 minutes. And this way, the deputies get on the scene, and the dispatcher, if some of the training they don't have, they can flip to that CAD. The CAD can say, you're going to do this, this, and this, and we're legally bound to that with the system. And it makes more sense. We could save a life.
So are you asking for us to make a move on this in the next month or quicker? Or, I mean, what's the timing? I understand the 2020. I understand it already is terrible as we speak. How urgent is this?
This system's not going to work correctly with what we have when we come up with the new radio system. It's going to work, but it's not going to be as efficient as it should be. I think what Matt was trying to do and David were trying to find other funds to secure it. Eileen did the $100 and some thousand grant for the radios.
Or for the phone.
For the phones. Now we're just trying to figure out where we can draw from the rest of it.
Mr. Coons, I think what we're trying to do is do it as a collective package. So when we disrupt the 911 center in a couple months with the phone system, we disrupt it once.
So you need a decision soon.
We would like,
so that
yes, sir.
So that you can hit that timing. Okay.
Because everything's coming in at one time, and it's best to do it now.
Okay. I really appreciate all the work you did researching it and thinking about cost as well as, better service. Thank you.
Other questions?
Sharon, I just have a couple, just for anyone who is learning, like I am, could you elaborate a little bit on the services that are actually going through the dispatch? In other words, it's not just the sheriff deputy.
No,
right?
it's the sheriff's office, it's the fire and rescue. We also have state police that come through. We dispatch for animal control. Yeah, it's not, we do, as far as the dispatch center goes, because we do a lot with the courts too, and with warrants and protective orders and subpoenas and civil paperwork. So there's a lot that goes on in there that we deal with a lot of agencies.
And fire and rescue.
And fire and rescue.
Okay. And then the cell phone, the ability of all of your software, whether it's the phone systems or the software, to quickly dispatch help when someone is calling in on a cell phone. Where are we on that?
Well, and that's not something that we have control over. That's purely through the phone companies, but we're pretty close. And I think we demonstrated too that when you call 911, we're pretty close to finding you right there. With the new, and I did mention earlier too, with the phone system, we currently can't even do caller ID on our landline. So when that upgrade, which gives us that, it also helps if you call and hang up and we don't know who you are. You might have had an emergency, but as far as getting where you are on a cell phone, it originally comes in as a wireless call, and if you retransmit it, it becomes what we call a phase 2, which puts it usually right on top of where you are.
So if, for citizens to know that if we spend this money today on this upgrading of the software, that enhances our systems, updates them so that they're cell phone compatible to a greater extent, or at least maintaining what you described before, and that it benefits all of the services that a citizen might be calling in.
It benefits all the services, and where this CAD system too, if somebody calls 911, the phone system will be tied to that CAD, where that information of that phone and that person automatically transfers into the CAD system. So it eliminates the dispatcher maybe making a mistake on a number or something. If they're taking and retyping it into the CAD system, it automatically brings it over. And the same with the 911 call. It's automatically bringing that Latin long in, which would also put it on the street that you're on. It might not give us the exact numerics at first, but it'll put us close.
Okay.
But it will enhance, definitely.
Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions?
We need a motion on this, or we don't have this?
I would presume this is actionable tonight.
I think it's up to the board, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I said I presume that it is actionable, so it's to the board's pleasure.
You don't have the-
Why I asked, because I was just
You don't have
wondering,
the
I said, it's for
contract.
health and safety, you understand. And I've seen times when things have been delayed, and a lot of times time is of the essence. And I really think that, this should be, go ahead and put it in place, because, when you upgrade everything else, you just, with the CAD system, everything, just roll it all into one. It makes it simpler, and it's the safety of the county. So if anybody gonna have a problem with, we're trying to provide safety for people that have emergency, then something's wrong with it, because if that fall call could be yours.
Thank you, sir, for understanding that.
I would move that we fund.
Mr. Chairman, not to interrupt you, what they are asking for is authorization to execute a contract.
Correct.
When we get the contract, we'll have the county attorney review that to form, but that's what they're asking for
But
tonight.
if all goes as it should, we are voting on appropriating a certain amount of money towards this system.
I think the appropriation would happen next month. The contract would have to come first.
Okay.
And if
I'll make that motion for the contract,
Okay.
to negotiate
Second.
the contract to let our attorney.
We have a motion that's duly seconded, and I'd just like to add, my feelings, my job is health, safety, and welfare of this county primarily. We don't do anything else, and I think that this is an important key, as I said, that whose time has come. Is there any other discussion?
I would also just ask David and Eileen, if a local newspaper were to contact you to ask you about more of what's going on with this system so that our public understands why we're funding this, that you would readily take that call and maybe interview with them?
Happily.
And, Mr. Chairman, I want, just for clarification, if I'm understanding correctly, that this, we're moving funds already that have been authorized.
The appropriation next month would come from fund balance. There were monies added to our fund balance,
Right.
specifically surpluses from the schools that were turned back into local funding.
Okay.
So the monies are there in fund balance.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, let me make sure that I understand what the motion is. The motion at this point is just to negotiate a contract, which will then be reviewed before we finally agree to go ahead with it.
He's already reviewed it.
Okay.
It's already been reviewed.
It's actually authorization to execute the contract. The contract is based on a cooperative procurement from 2015.
Yes, sir.
And the contract's already been reviewed?
It has. I think the contract needs to be before the board, though, for them to, I think they could do
Okay.
that in August.
That's what you think's best.
I have reviewed the contract. Mr. Chairman, I think it would be more appropriate if the board had it actually before you today to review yourself and to authorize yourself or the county administrator to execute that contract. However, I have reviewed it. I have made changes, which the company agreed to. So to that end, I can simply say that I will sign it where it says approved as to form by county attorney. You could authorize the execution of the contract subject to the appropriations of next month. I'm a little uncomfortable with you approving a contract you have not even reviewed. The board itself. I have.
Well,
But
I'm
I'm not the one-
perfectly satisfied with the county attorney that has reviewed the legality of a contract that the county's going to enter into. So
Okay.
I don't personally feel that my reading is going to add anything to it.
Okay.
I can speak a little bit of legalese, but.
Sure, and I would further that our sheriff's department and our emergency services have a pretty long history of being very, very frugal with county money, and they've researched the heck out of this thing and put together a real good presentation. I don't think we're exposed right now.
Oh, all right. That's absolutely fine. I
Motion,
just want to give you the
second,
option.
plenty of discussion and comment. The county attorney is now satisfied that she can look at it. And
I've
she'll
reviewed
sign
it
off on
already
it.
and already renegotiated a couple of the terms.
So call for the question. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So ordered.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
All right, moving into regular agenda items, we've got appointments, pages 58 through 66. Betty, would you lead us through that?
I can. We have some appointment requests that, or reappointment requests that are included in your packet for terms that expire June the 30th this year. Those are for two on the Planning Commission, Alvin Wake and Maryland South, and then on the Social Services Board, Ellen Carneal. Those are
Reappointments.
Those are all reappointments from citizens who have submitted applications to be reappointed.
I would like to move that we reappoint the three named.
Didn't I see a VIPSA in there?
There is a VIPSA, Yeah, I was going to get to that.
That would be a new, these are reappointments, and then we'll go to new.
Got it. I'm slow.
Have a motion? Do we have a
Second.
Motion duly seconded. Is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign, so ordered.
You'll see there on the bottom that we do have some upcoming airport committee appointments. Those terms expire the end of August. And Randy Colson has already let us know that he does not wish to be reappointed. But we will search to get some other applications for those.
Chris Jones falls into that category also. He has told us that he's not going to seek reappointment.
His term is not up.
But when it's up,
Yeah, his is a couple years out.
okay, I was getting the feeling it was closer.
I think he plans on maybe resigning in December. I'm not sure.
Maybe that,
And I'm going to let the county administrator let you know about the next application that we have received from, and I'm not going to try to butcher his name, Dutch, who has submitted.
Buchenkamp. Yeah, I think it's Dutch.
Dutch, actually.
Very good, yeah.
Mhm.
As he says, if you ain't Dutch, you ain't much.
We had the privilege, Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen of the board, to meet with Dutch the other day. He's a retired expert on recycling, I guess is the best way to say it, and a resource that's kind of been a unknown gem in our community, and he's come to our attention by way of Mr. Kuntz, and he has expressed an interest in being on the VIPSA board. We've had some preliminary discussions to explain what that entails. Of course, the board is aware I have just completed my term as chairman of the VIPSA board, and I'm looking to revert either to an alternative role or to revert off the board. And I think we'd be served very well by Mr. Buchenkamp.
Very good.
I certainly move that we appoint Dutch to the VIPS board.
Second.
In discussion, if you can't pronounce his last name?
Oh, I
First name's
Okay.
easy.
You say it 10 times, you'll own it forever.
He may be the only Dutch in the family.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So ordered.
I'd just like to comment briefly, Mr. Chairman. I really like the amount of citizens that we're able to bring into these boards. It's inspiring to me to know that we have people that have this kind of expertise and are willing to serve our community. That really enriches us, I think.
Thank you, sir. The others are just for information at this point,
Yeah.
not up, okay. All right, if that takes care of appointments, then we will move to budget appropriation and transfer requests, of which there is one modified
Yes, that's
request
2019.
that has been, okay, that's
Right.
been put before you. So Betty?
First you have the memo. I did it in memo form for the 2018 to close out the end of the year closeout type things. It was faster to do it this way than to do it the normal way with all the sheets of paper. But I'll go through these. The first are supplements. They're called supplements, but these are really in and outs is what I know Marcia used to call them, where we have revenue, extra revenue that had come in over what was budgeted, and we need to expense it out, or we have expensed it out. And this is just a way to balance out the budget, to make it a little cleaner. The first one is meals tax collected. We received $4,765 in meals tax over what had been budgeted for the year. And so this is the disbursement out to the volunteer fire and rescue departments, $953 additional each. FY 2018-38, we would like to use additional fuel sales revenue that has been received over what was collected over what was budgeted, and also to appropriate back into the expense side the grant reimbursements that we received for some projects that had been done at the airport. So just, if you want any more detail than that, it's there, and I'll certainly...
Has the change in fuel price had any effect on volume? that you can see, since we did that a couple of months ago?
I haven't
Yeah.
noticed
It's
any
been-
change.
Still been about, yeah. that's it. We
We're
believe
still, nobody's commented
Well, it's still
on the
good. It's
additional.
still a good price.
We are still low, yes. But it is, I raised it to 75 cents above. So, and you'll see there in number 38, where we had several grant, I submitted for several grants that came back, and we used them for different projects at the airport, painting, replacing the beacon, painting the tower, a paving project that was done last year. And then we're applying some of it to professional services. Number 39 is using some of that additional sales, fuel sales revenue to put back against purchasing fuel.
So Betty, when I
Yes.
see those two, 38 and 39, does that mean over a period of time, we spent $27,594 for fuel, and we actually received an additional $5,714 more than that?
Yes,
So that would be our profit if we were a...
yes. And we
Okay.
also have more. It was actually more than the 27,000
Right. Got it.
over what we had budgeted.
Got it.
Number 40 is reimbursement from insurance that we're putting back to some
Is
of...
that lighting damage or lightning damage?
Did I have, it was lightning. Lightning damage to, we had lights damaged in there too, but...
So you weren't
this-
wrong.
No, I was not wrong.
Let's have that on the record.
Mr. Kent's Betty is seldom wrong.
Understood.
This 6,000 was actually to replace, I think it was some type of a DVR recorder or something that was replaced last year. 41, we bill out to the school board for school activities, where we use off-duty deputies to cover football games, different graduation, different things where they need extra security or at those activities. And then off-duty security also is used for at private events, the racetrack, some of the 5K races, different things like that where they use those and the county's reimbursed for those. So that's just an in and out of those expenses.
Could I, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Move to approve supplements FY 2018-37 through FY 2018-42,
You certainly may.
and encourage my friends to second me.
We have a motion duly made. Do we have a second?
I'll make that second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion?
If anybody's not clear on what I'm doing, I'm just trying to clear the supplements so that we can move on to the transfers and do it in tranches rather than individually.
There you go. Motion duly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So ordered. Moving on to the transfers.
Do I need to go through the transfers?
I don't think so. I'd like to move that we approve transfers fiscal year 2018-10 through, I scrolled down too fast,
18-12.
12.
10, 11, and 12.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So ordered.
Okay. Then you move on to FY19, current year. There are 3 supplements. This is basically rolling money from the previous year, from FY18, into the current year. And you have an amended number 3 on your table for emergency services. You need me to go over any of those? I'd be happy to.
So it's 1 through 3.
Yes.
I move that we approve budget supplement for fiscal year 2019-1 through 3.
With 3 being the corrected.
The corrected
Okay.
3.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, so this 3-1 that was 5,914, now we have 3-1, 38,740? Is that, am I looking at the right thing?
That sounds right.
And that's,
2019, number 3,
right,
yes.
and
Those are all,
what's the reason for that?
they were, I had only picked up one of the lines. I was only carrying over, I think, equipment, and I went back and forth.
Okay, you picked up, I
Picked
see.
over training and maintenance service
Yeah.
contracts.
These 2.
Got it, okay, thank you.
It's still unspent monies coming forward.
Right, got it.
All right, let me see if I remember where we were. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Pete seconded.
Pete second.
We discussed.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, so ordered.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Betty.
Yeah, thank you, Betty.
Madam County Attorney.
No,
You're on deck.
the only thing I would say is that I've given you some nighttime reading there in your packets, and feel free to give me a call. When you can't sleep at night, then that would be good reading. But on that, no, sir, I do not have any updates at this time.
If your phone isn't ringing, you'll know it isn't me. All right, county administrator items.
Mr. Chairman, I have one item I want to bring to the board's attention this evening, and that is our memorandum of understanding we have drafted with our registrar, Miss Melissa Welch, who was in the office, in the room here tonight.
She's in the room.
We have worked with Melissa on this, the county attorney and myself, on drafting a memorandum of understanding with the registrar's office that we hope will become kind of a boilerplate and a template that we use with constitutional officers to help define their level of participation within the county's personnel plan. The board may recall that back in the spring budget process, Ms. Walsh she had a full-time position added to her staff. The individual is currently in a part-time role, the individual was in a part-time role, and as of July 1st, has transitioned into a full-time role. So the memorandum of understanding is needed. We have spent some time in drafting it, and I want to bring to your attention one item in particular, and that is Article 1, Section 7. It deals with overtime pay, discretionary leave, and compensation time, or comp time as we refer to it. Now, the board may recall, our personnel policy does not have a paragraph dealing with comp time. We have paragraphs dealing with how we pay that out upon separation, but the accrual of it is something that we did away with back in 2013 with the adoption of our current personnel plan. In reviewing Ms. Welsh's current personnel plan that she's drafted for her office, she has some pretty good language dealing with comp time, and this is something that we're probably going to want to look at adding to our personnel policy in the fall after we draft the necessary changes to our personnel policy. We will be working in the meantime with Ms. Welsh's office in their budget, probably back in front of the board next month, adding a line item to her budget for a small amount of overtime that her full-time employee may actually expend in this year's election cycle to kind of make sure that she's compensated according to the law. And I'm going to be working with the county attorney and, of course, Ms. Welsh a little bit on adding a comp time provision to our personnel plan. What I would like the board to consider is authorizing us to sign this memorandum of understanding with Ms. Welsh to get this in place that kind of defines her level of participation. Most of this is pretty solid at this point in time. The only point in the memorandum that may change a little bit is the level of hours for overtime and comp time balances. That we've got it set at 100 now, max. We may have some further adjustments of that depending on what our needs are across the organization. But with that being said, Heather Lewis and I have spent some time working with Melissa on this, and I would ask for the board's authorization to sign and execute the agreement.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is your pleasure?
I'll make a motion for the memorandum of understanding for the restaurant.
Second.
Have a motion duly seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. So ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I had this evening.
Oh, Matthew, you're so short-winded. I hardly. Yes,
It's
sir.
summertime.
It pains me to do this.
Okay.
Because the county administrator says he has one item, but he had three in the board packet. I'm curious, on the land use valuation program and ordinance revision, we had a pretty clear path moving forward on that. I think Wayne wisely sort of slowed us down because he wanted some more time to look into details of how our land use program is being validated, et cetera. If it's appropriate, I'd like to find out from Wayne if you've had a chance to do that, and if we have sort of a plan as to what our next steps are. Is this maybe in the August meeting that because I know we get caught up with having to call special meetings, et cetera, if we're in a hurry. I don't think we're in a hurry necessarily, but we all, I think, unanimously wanted to give you that time. Have you had that adequate time?
Yeah, I not all the time I wanted. I had some of the time, but I did talk to Bonnie, and I also went with Glenn too. And I was looking at certain things. I wasn't finding where it was being misused. There was some clerical errors that was he straightened up. Which I guess out of 500 and some properties. And you got about 5 that there were some clerical errors. You're going to have that, and Bonnie said she's going to correct that.
Yep.
But I would like to also get back with Bonnie again and just go over everything, and we see which direction we can go at that time. But that's what I came up so far.
And I think that makes all the sense in the world from my perspective. I also met with Bonnie and a couple of our local farmers, and Pete was at that meeting. And at that time, I got the sense that Bonnie, who is solely responsible for setting the rates for land use, I think she admitted that it was time to take another look at those. And she said that what she was looking to do, just hasn't had a chance because I was pushing so hard, was to look at some surrounding similar counties and sort of develop what's the average and potentially change the rate, which would take a lot of pressure that I'm feeling from my constituents. And the farmers in the room all said, we have no problem with that, we'll do the research for you. We were just concerned that you were talking about wiping out the program. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that that was ever my intent. I'm sorry if I stirred up the community in what role I had there. My concern more was that we were not paying attention to SLEAC. In fact, we were pretty much ignoring it. And I didn't understand where that rate was coming from. But having had a very good discussion with Bonnie and some of our farming community, I think Bonnie intends to take another look at that, and I think that'll take a lot of pressure off of us, because I'm sure you guys have all heard, you guys and ladies have all heard from your constituents, did you look everywhere before you raised our taxes? And that was what was pushing me. So I'm happy to hear you've had some time to look at it, and I don't think there's any additional pressure. For myself, I'm going to be waiting to see what Bonnie does with the rates.
Right.
I'd like to throw in the meeting that John was just referring to. I felt was extremely helpful in that the people from the farming community were not at all upset about taking another look at updating it, because, by the way, I don't think we have updated the rates for over 10 years now. Again, they were worried, and the point was made, if we don't do something, we're liable to lose the whole program. As John mentioned, the community will really review our surrounding communities, 8 or 10 of our surrounding unit, to find out what they are doing with land use. And what we thought we would suggest was that they take the median, not the median, but the average of those 8 or 10 communities, and suggest to Bonnie that be our what our charges were. No one in the room was in any way against that. I think it is up to us as the county to review the data that they present to us, but I have no reason to suggest that it would not be correct data. But I think we do need to review it, and then once we have reviewed it, send it on to Bonnie as our recommendation for what charged land use should be.
And I think one of our other important responsibilities as a board is to make sure that taxes are applied in a fair way to all of our different constituents, formats, farms, industry, marinas, boats, whatever, because if somebody's paying less than their fair share, it necessarily means somebody else is paying more. Mm-hmm. And if everybody's paying their fair share in I'm trying to find the word that I'm looking for, but not that Wayne Jesse pays the same taxes as I do, but proportionately we pay our fair share. So I think that we have given this land use a very, very, very thorough study in all the different categories and special meetings, and I think it would probably be appropriate for us to have this on the agenda for August.
I think so.
Okay, that was going to be my question, Mr. Chairman. I think one of the aspects of clear communication is to just have some sort of timetable. Not that it can't be changed, but to anticipate so that someone who may want to comment publicly on anything before the board, but especially something this big or this important, can anticipate that and doesn't miss the opportunity. Right. And I think in communicating with citizens, I want to be able to say, okay, this is what's being considered, talked about, this committee looking at this, but then this is when it'll be before the board. And also the scope of this is this ordinance, right, that has to do with the documentation or the specifics of enrolling in the program. That's what we're looking at, right?
Yes, I mean, I still feel we need to potentially change the ordinance to say shall validate, because we are supposed to be validating every 6 years, and we are in the 7th year. So I feel like we should make sure that the commissioner is validating every 6 years. There's a reason why we do that. Wayne, you make a good point. I did a pretty extensive dive on that thing, and there's not a lot of clerical errors, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't still be shooting for zero. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean...
And some of the errors might not be clerical because the application might not have been correct.
That's right. And one more reason why the validation is so important. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Glenn Nix and Bonnie Davenport, both of whom helped me tremendously in doing my research, which was just taking Google Earth and looking to see where there's fields and where there's trees. And I think we may have also created a little bit more sinew between GIS and the Commissioner's office. There's things she can use GIS to do that'll help her in her validation.
And she and I are on track to work together on a letter that goes out with the revalidations this fall. Yeah. And I'd like...
By the way,
hold on just a second. Since you've done so much, I'd like for you to look over my shoulder when we do that letter, because I don't want to miss any points that are important.
Happily.
To you. Yes, sir, Mr. Mansfield.
Yeah. Let's include Betty Bray in those that really helped come up with.
I would have, but when she had her farmer hat on, she was mean to me.
Okay. Does that take care of your question, John? All right.
Thank you.
Under unfinished and new business, I'd hate to take things out of order, but we do have something brief and probably very easy to deal with, which is a memorandum of understanding that Betty has given us, and she's left the room. So, Matt, do you or Heather want to comment on that?
Do you want me or you got it? I got it. This is something Betty's now returned. Sorry. It's okay. We're talking about the MOU with social services. So I'll let Betty kind of maybe explain it, but I have reviewed it, and again, this is another one in which...
How about I set it up and I'll turn it over to the legalese. Jason Patton with the Rappahannock Community College Workforce Development Center has a need for a small amount of office space with DSS. We do not need a public hearing to lease space to another public entity like RCC, Rappahannock Community College. So they have requested that they lease some faculty space from the county. We do have the space available with Rebecca and the Department of Social Services counselor. I think you reviewed it.
I have, and I made substantial revisions. It was not that it was a bad written document in the sense that the college was going to take advantage of the county. It's just that I could not understand it. It's not saying something. So I went through and changed it. Rebecca had already negotiated the actual terms. Betty had been involved in that as well. Mrs. Morgan, the Director of Social Services. It's my understanding that the community college is in agreement, but their director is out of town. And so it would be my recommendation that if the board's agreeable that you do a motion authorizing Rebecca Morgan and the chairman, authorizing the chairman to enter into this contract. Of course, this will be subject to the community college accepting these terms and signing it as well.
Does it anywhere in there have us agreeing to providing air conditioning?
Let's not get demanding now. No. So the building, they're renting space within Department of Social Services' footprint within the Cook's Corner building. It does not require us to provide air conditioning. It requires us to provide an amount of space within Social Services office.
Just want to make sure they can't come back to us and say we're a terrible landlord, even if we are.
There is a provision that says they're allowed to notify us of any defects or issues with the building, but then the following sentence says that we're under no liability to remediate those defects.
Could you restate what the motion you would have us make is?
I apologize, yeah, because I butchered that quite bad. Is simply to authorize the chairman to enter into this contract and understand that if the community college does not accept the terms, we'll be back in August with a renegotiated agreement.
So moved.
Motion, do we have a second? Second. Motion duly seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. So ordered. And now we're moving into proposed amendment for Middlesex County Purchasing Policies and Procedures Manual, which is covered in pages 86 through 103. Who would like the floor on this one?
I guess that would probably fall to me. No, I don't want that up. Yeah.
Pete, you think we can do this in under 10 minutes?
Put it, Matt, he doesn't have that up. Put it back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I agree with everything that Betty wrote in her letter to us, with the exception of conflicts within the committee. And I shall read. Within the small purchasing policy, 50,000 or less, Mr. Mansfield wishes to remove the ability to negotiate with offerers to determine the most qualified, responsive, and suitable to provide goods and services. This includes professional services, pages 6 and 7. No, Mr. Mansfield does not wish to remove the ability to negotiate. In fact, I believe that any time that you're purchasing any item, you should be able to negotiate with the people that are going to offer the services. I don't think I've ever made a purchase back in my engineering days when I didn't talk with the provider of the services. What I have disagreed with, and I'm sorry that I have bored every damn person here over it, is competitive negotiations as per the Virginia Code 2-2-43, the other 2-1 or something, or the other 2, I believe it is. In that code, in the Virginia Purchasing Code, they talk about 3 different things. Commodities being the first category, second category, I don't remember what it was, but commodities and that second category, they make the statement that you can purchase either by competitive sealed bids or competitive negotiation. In the third category, they say that you can use either one. However, on any purchase above $60,000, and by the way, the third category is professional services, and anything above $60,000, they say that you're required to use competitive negotiations. We are not, Middlesex County cannot change that whatsoever. So Pete Mansfield is definitely not suggesting that we try. But for less than $60,000 on professional services, I think we should go for competitive sealed bids, the same as we do the rest. Now you may ask, and I'm sure some of you wish that nobody had asked, you may ask, why is Pete Mansfield so beating on the table against competitive negotiations as defined by the Virginia Code? So if you would now, Matt, show the first slide. I would like to read to you the first paragraph of Section 4 of our Virginia Code, Virginia Code 2.2-4302.2, that covers competitive negotiations. Slide 2, please. This is what it says in the Virginia Code. Negotiations shall be conducted beginning with the offerer ranked first. Well, in competitive negotiations, the code says that you may ask for non-binding quotes, but they have to be non-binding. They are not binding at the time that you ask. Along with that, you should talk about their ability to complete the job. You should, in all cases, do a negotiation with them. At some point, the code says that you must rank them 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then, at that point, is when slide 2 takes place. Negotiations shall then be conducted beginning with the offerer ranked first. Now here is what I really cannot understand. If a contract satisfactory and advantageous to the public body can be negotiated at a price considered to be fair and reasonable and pursuant to the contractual terms and conditions acceptable to the public body, the award shall be made to that offerer. I'm again going to stop at this point. You have not received any other quotes from any other company. You have only talked to one company, and they give you a new price.
Mr. Mansfield, may I ask a question? Didn't part of what we talked about first is that we talked to a whole slew of whoever we can talk to and rank them 1 through ever how many we talk to, then we get to this point. So we have talked to other companies.
You have talked to the other companies, but you have not gotten a binding quotation of what cost they are willing to sell their product for.
But without cutting you short, is there anything new that you want to tell us about your dislike for competitive negotiations? Because you have talked to us about this a great many times, and I am thoroughly familiar with all of the issues that you have with it. And I find it to come up short in some aspects too, but I also find it to be a worthwhile program in several instances. Just in the interest of time, if there's anything new, and we will sit and listen to you tell us again if you want, but I think everybody's of a mindset.
Yes, I do want to say something more. The purchase of the emergency radio system. We got a non-binding proposal from the company we went with for around $3,500,000. We then did what they're saying here. They were ranked #1, so we only talked to them, and the price that they ended up with was $5,500,000. We then accepted it, and that's what we paid for it. We never talked to the other company that at one time gave us their non-binding quote of $3.2 million. They since reported to me and sent me paperwork showing that they would have sold the radio system to us for that amount. If that is so, competitive negotiations cost us $2.011 million more than had we gone with the #2 company, which we never got a quote on. Now, I understand, Mr. Chairman, you were not there at the time.
I was. I came in, I think the contract was negotiated and signed several months after I was sworn in. But I spent many hours with Matt and Bob LaBeouf and being brought up to speed on this thing. I've got a manual at home that's this thick with all of the specifications and everything in there. So I do feel that I was up to speed on that and was part of that unanimous vote to go with Harris, I believe it is. Harris. And I'm just here to tell you, I've been through this thing. We've been through it in this very room with a PowerPoint presentation. And as the Almighty is my witness, we did not pay $2 million too much for that system. And you believe that, and you're entitled to your belief, but then another person that had anything to do with this that believes that. So I have to respect your beliefs, and I would ask you to do the same for us, because we don't believe we spent too much. As John would say, we have to agree to disagree. So,
I mean, can I summarize where I think we are?
yes, please.
I think the committee of Pete and I have worked very hard, and certainly have to acknowledge have worked staff very hard to get to a point where Pete and I just disagree on competitive negotiation. And we felt that he and I couldn't meet halfway, and so we were bringing it to the board. If for no other reason, it's more people and it's an odd number of people, and we'll get hopefully a decision because we're a larger group. I think Pete has made his points, and he does feel strongly, and we should all note that. I'll speak briefly on my side. I feel like we would be handicapping ourselves unnecessarily by, as I've said, and I think Pete and Kathleen have both heard me on this, if we're surgeons and we have a table full of tools, you can choose not to use a tool, or you can throw a tool in the trash can. I don't see why we throw that tool in the trash can, and that's just my point of view.
Well said. Are there any issues on thresholds? I've heard 50,000 for this and 60,000 for that. Are there any issues on thresholds that are not practical from staff standpoint? Have you all made any changes there that are going to cause staff heartburn, like going out and having to get 3 bids on a lunch ticket.
I'll
or something.
defer to Pete and Betty. I honestly, at some point, the ping pong ball was going back and forth so much that I nodded off. So what's in the document? And Pete, how do you feel about the thresholds that are in the document?
Well, our threshold is $50,000 for what staff can approve without going before the board, and I don't think there was any discussion about that.
So that's unchanged.
The 60,000 that you mentioned is the new number that has come out, and then, by the way, that might be 80,000.
There's a conflict in the code, yeah, we've talked about that.
I'm not sure. But that was in the third purchasing method that said for professional services, you will only use competitive negotiations above the 60,000 or the 80,000. That was the only point that number was.
And what did you use under that number?
You could use either one.
Okay.
Or your own system.
So staff, we have no
Pardon?
difficulties with...
Or you can make up your own system. The code
No
allows
difficulties with that issue?
you to pick.
So I think the way it is right now with that 60 or 80 threshold, staff is fine with that, and I'm fine with that. Pete, do you have an issue with that threshold?
No,
Okay, so I think we're one issue, and it's competitive negotiation. You're saying I don't want it ever anywhere, and I'm saying I leave the tool on the table and trust us to be adults with it.
John, I have a big problem with competitive negotiation, the way the state of Virginia says that you have to do it. As competitive, there is nothing in this world wrong with competitive negotiation. In fact, in every time that you buy something worth $45,000, you sure as hell ought to be able to talk to them about it and talk to all the companies. But at some point, you've got to get, unless you want it to be a sole source purchase, you've got to get a final price from all the different companies that you negotiate with. A firm final price, not a non-binding price. It has to be a firm price. And then you can make your decision. But whenever you make a purchase that you do not have 2 firm prices, that's a sole source bid.
So what I would recommend is that I'd like to respectfully offer you the chance to make a motion where you remove competitive negotiation, and then we'll try that. And if that doesn't pass, then I would come and make a motion that we leave it in there.
Okay. I so move.
So you move that we remove competitive negotiation from the purchasing policy. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, in any place that the Virginia Code allows us to remove it and use competitive sealed bids.
Okay.
We have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
And Mr. Chairman, if I can remind you, the chairman can second a motion for discussion purpose.
Well, out of consideration for Mr. Mansfield, I will second it for the purpose of discussion, if there is discussion beyond.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman, because I would like to interject in here just for understanding of this. In this policy, a table was inserted to help with readability, which I love, the table. So I just want to be clear on this. According to this table and the amount of purchases between $10,000 and $50,000, there is Board of Supervisor approval required. Okay, so that, I'm just clarifying that for myself. I thought I was hearing something different a few minutes ago. Is that accurate?
Yes, ma'am, that's my understanding of the final draft.
Okay.
Patty, is that yours as well? Ms. Muncy, is
Yes.
that was your understanding as well?
It is. I know there was some discussion at the committee level whether or not that required formal board approval or whether it was just a phone call and approval, an informal approval.
Okay, and
But discussion certainly with the Board of Supervisors.
discussion with the Board of Supervisors and informal approval. Okay, and, okay, and then, just to understand the motions, would the document in front of us incorporates the changes that Pete has asked for? So when we're voting, then where does the document come from for the change? I mean, for,
So I think Ms. Muncie's highlighted a few areas in the document where she and I tried to point out, Mr. Coons, Mr. Mansfield disagreed. Here's an instance where Mr. Mansfield wants shall, Mr. Coons wanted prefer.
okay,
So there's a few of those throughout the
we
document.
can work with the same document to make
Yes.
those
Correct.
motions
Oh,
on
yes.
that. Okay.
It's essentially at
I
this
just
point,
wanted
it's binary. It can go this way or it can go that
Okay,
way.
I just wanted to make sure that the vote didn't apply to anything else within the policy other than the areas that are not in agreement.
So we could, if you wanted to amend the motion to be even clearer to that point, we could do that.
Yeah.
I'm okay, I just want to make
Yeah.
sure it's clear that the,
Because I have gone through and done some formatting changes. Like you said, I added the table.
I think it's very clear in the policy. I just want to make sure that the policy matches the discussion.
And before we potentially get to a vote, I'd want to check again to make sure that the law of unintended consequences, that we haven't rewritten policy that isn't practical. I want to make sure that the administration is comfortable with the aspects, because you're really not that involved whether the negotiation is in there or out of there. The other stuff is what I'm worried about on a staff level. So I just want to make sure that we're not making y'all's job difficult and not doing a good thing that felt like a good thing to do in here.
Mr. Chairman, I'm confident that the county attorney and the assistant county administrator, Ms. Betty Muncy, and John and Pete perform their committee duties
With
out
that,
there.
you got a motion and a second.
One last thing.
One
This is
last.
very reminiscent to our recent county budget. You know, we disagreed on a tiny little portion. Well, I characterize it as tiny. But there was a lot that Pete and I, through the staff's research and help, were able to come to and get us up to a 2018 procurement policy. So, yep, we had some disagreement, but we cleaned this thing up, and I think staff is happy.
Okay.
Motion and a second.
And a second. And, Mr. Chairman, assuming that this is going to go quickly, I just 2 more cents in. I would like to say I have great respect for Pete's desire to be frugal with county money, and I think that's important. And I don't think this specific vote should reflect a lack of commonality on that. I think that that Pete's efforts to be frugal and to exhaust different possibilities, I think it's important, and I appreciate it. But I have to say, I do feel hesitant to make the government perhaps less responsive by making it less flexible. And I do think we have professional staff that are doing a good job, and I'm not, the way this is set out, I'm not worried. I'm not concerned. I think we can be frugal. I think we can explore different possibilities. I think the board can provide guidance within the budget process and beyond, and make good decisions going forward.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any other discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Aye. The motion fails.
I move that we approve the new procurement policy to include competitive negotiation.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I will second that motion.
Motion duly seconded. I feel like we covered most of the discussion on the last one, but is there anything to discuss?
I would just like to point out that this may appear to some in the community as the dissolution of the Gang of Three, but Pete and I are still very, very, very able to work together.
We have a motion, a second, and we've had discussion. If there's no further discussion.
I just want one more thing. So what are the major changes? I know we had a person policy and on staff. I know, and the staff is going, I know we had it in place. What are the, I'm just looking at it and I understand that you're saying that, and I don't have any problem with that, not at all. But I wanted to know what were the little changes, that's all.
It's a great question, Wayne, because they did a lot of work.
There,
Because I know we have something in place that's working, and it's fine.
We do.
And, I just want to...
There really wasn't that many changes made. I think, we kind
Just a
of
few wording.
reformatted it, updated some code sections in there to meet current state code.
Okay.
I think that
Certainly
chart is a
added
really
the
good
chart to
example.
make it a little clearer for people.
There you go.
I
Betty,
did-
you consulted like 3 or 4 other counties and sort of saw what more recent or more modern procurement policies look like?
Well,
Mr. Jesse, what the county administrator pulled up on the screen too is probably a very good summary.
Yeah.
This chart, these are probably the most important small nuances that came out of the committee, is the amount
and
of
this is what
informal or
Mr.
formal
Mansfield did.
quotes when we go to the board, when we do not.
right.
Um,
And I did, I actually combined a form that New Kent uses and the school board uses to come up with that requisition form that's at the end. Should be somewhere in there.
But there were a
I can
lot of
get it
small
to you.
changes.
I think I added it in there, yeah. It's page 101 of your packet. We created that, and that's, it has a place on there to document the other quotes that we receive, informal quotes, and then, a place that if you only get one quote, put a reason why that you only got the one quote, and you can also document why you're going with not necessarily going with the lowest quote.
Okay, I'm good.
yeah.
Is there any further
So,
discussion?
well, I would point out that because of this process, from my point of view, it looks like we have a clearer policy where the accountability that is in place is documented, so therefore it's greater transparency all the way around. And I think that's a benefit that we probably wouldn't have arrived at without going down and taking a look at this. So I think this is a worthwhile endeavor.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. So ordered. Now we move to supervisors' comments and reports. Which end should we start on tonight? Kathy, ladies first. I'll get you.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I continue to learn a lot about the county. I'll try to briefly summarize some of these things. I attended a meeting of the Community Programs and Management Team, and the takeaway from that's the team that exercises oversight, I guess, for the social services, and the educational services that are provided to citizens of our county. And my takeaway, I'm impressed with the people trying to provide very high-quality services in a very compassionate way. Professional yet compassion, so I think that's an important element, and I think that's a marker of our community, that professionalism accompanied by the compassion and the knowledge of individual people. So this provides support to families and community needs. And I think sometimes these programs can seem like, well, there's money there and money being channeled through, and what are we getting? And I would just say that when things go really badly in our society, it often comes down to a failure in the kind of programs that reach out and give somebody a hand and visit a family and say, what do you need, how can we help you get on your feet? And so it's important, it's really important. I also witnessed a lot of creative cooperation with members of the community and other counties and school systems to do more with less and to do better. So I appreciate that. It was good. Good meeting. High school graduation, great, impressive. The dignity and maturity of our young speakers and the graduates themselves, the dignity of the event, and really reflects the values of the community. And I was very happy to be there. And the school system end of the year celebration for employees, again, emphasis on people and their contributions and saying thank you, which is important. It's something that we have the ability to do well, and I'm really happy that different aspects of our community do well. And it also highlights the volunteers in our schools and how important they are. And I was glad to see that they were recognized, including the volunteers who were in the paper 90 years old and in the classroom every day. That's really impressive. The Planning Commission, I won't go through too much of that because most of their matters eventually end up here. But there was a discussion relating to the comprehensive plan and the tourist home ordinance, and I don't think I'm missing anything there. And then I was glad to join Chip with a meeting on transportation, specifically the Norris Bridge. It was hosted by Rob Whitman, Keith Hodges, other members of the state administration, Deputy Transportation Secretary, and it was a situation of promoting or asking for regional cooperation, and I was glad to be there. The bridge is big, it's important, and I was glad to see Congressman Whitman reaching out to get the local team involved. But it's a situation that we're going to face from time to time, to look at what's in our interest as we compete with other counties, at the same time that we are balancing being contributors to regional cooperation, which we clearly are seeing with the tourism and other things.
You stated that a lot better than I might have.
And I also had a great morning at the Sheriff's Office today, and appreciate that the operation there really was very helpful to see what's going on and learn a lot.
Very good. Mr. Coates.
June 5th, I attended a men's soccer state quarterfinal at Middlesex High School. It was pretty cool for us to host that. Our men did great, had a great season, and it's interesting to go through the budget line items down to the point of where we're going to finance trips on the road. We didn't have to finance a trip on the road. We brought their butts here. Unfortunately, they beat us, but we got a little hot dog money out of them first. Had a number of broadband meetings. I think towards the end of summer, we're going to see more progress on broadband. I'm really, I jumped into broadband a little bit scared about my technical know-how, but what we've been working on in the last 2 months is bringing in community members with technical know-how, and I'm more convinced than ever that this may be our biggest infrastructure improvement if we can come to a good project. We're still miles from understanding what that might be, but I'm reminded that equal access to broadband for our children is important, but also if we're going to compete with so many of the jobs out there that are jobs that you can work remotely, they're looking for good schools, fun places to live, low cost of living. Can I connect to the internet? That's important for us if we're going to have jobs that people want to settle here, leave Richmond a little early and before retirement, still do 10 more years here. They're going to need internet access in this day and age, and it's got to be fast. I had Middlesex Foundation meetings as well. We're getting really close to finding out if we're going to win this project, and I think it will be a real catalyst for this community to have one of our village clusters develop. Actually have some outside money come in the form of grants and private investment That's huge, and I'm also very proud of my small role on that foundation and all the work that Michelle Brown and Bruce DeSimone and many, many others have done to get us to the point where somebody's considering giving us a whole lot of money to get us wood-fired pizza and microbrew, and maybe some housing for teachers and other important things. VIPSA, got some meetings with VIPSA, Steve Geisler. We got Dutch Buchenkamp on board. I think that's another huge win for the county, and I think he'll be just a great asset to us. Had a meeting with, and thank you, Pete, for putting together a meeting with some of our farming shareholders in the community. It was a good meeting because this is and has been a contentious issue in this county, but it's, I think, for many years stayed under the surface. When I campaigned for this position, I said I was going to bring light to these kinds of issues, and at times it's been hard, at times it's been misunderstood, but hopefully in the end what we're doing is being transparent and addressing both the revenue side and the expense side of doing business as a county. So I'm proud of that work as well, and I think we're all getting closer to a place where we're happier and more equitable. June 22nd, I got to go to a presentation at the Department of Social Services. They did an exchange program with Sweden and sent one of our Department of Social Services people over to Sweden. And just a really interesting program. I mean, she put out a whole spread of Swedish food and talked about all the different cultures and traditions, but it all was in the context of, you know, are they facing the same problems as societies as we are? And largely they were, and they handled certain things differently, and I just really think that was a brilliant play on the part of social services in Middlesex to even apply for something like that, but then go and win it, and then go and do it and come back, and that department made a point of let's share what we learned and bring the community in to hear about this. So that was really neat. I have a couple issues I want to bring up. I frequent Wake Beach as part of my responsibility as a supervisor. It's a VDOT right of way. What's the term I'm looking? It's a VDOT.
VDOT owns.
VDOT access. VDOT owns it, and the trash is full, and it's been full for months, and nobody's clearing it out. I've reached out to VDOT, and I'm committing here now that I'm not going to sleep until we have a better trash solution. We have such limited amounts of public access beach. We need to make them assets and not eyesores. And whether VDOT's going to partner with us on that or not, we're going to find a different solution. And unfortunately, the solution might be what VDOT's proposing, because they've done something similar at the Norris Bridge. They just take the trash cans out. The point that I've made, as somebody who cleans up roads periodically, and as a function of that, has a lot of time to think about why the hell people litter so much. If it's not easy, people aren't going to throw it away. And the beaches, I mean, we're a peninsula that's jutting out into the bay, essentially. If we're not going to keep our beaches clean, we're going to, it's just, to me, that's a bellwether in a way. So I'm going to keep working on that and come up with a solution. I'd also like to consider doing a town hall in August or July and encourage as many of you who are also interested in the subject matter to attend. I'm concerned what some of these tariffs are going to do to some of our industries, like, you know, Mid-Atlantic Metals. I mean, I don't know what it's going to do, but I'd like to invite them to come and tell us how this is going to impact them, and if there's anything that the local government can do to help. Maybe even a bigger impact is what's going to happen with soy. Now, I understand that the Chinese tariffs there, you know, and I think I understand the impact, but, you know, this whole land use thing comes down to, do we want to mess at all with our farmers? And really, we don't. They're already hanging by a thread, and what's happening at the federal level is going to have an impact to our community, and I'd like for them to come in and talk to us similarly about what local government can do. Unfortunately, racking my own little pea brain, I don't see a lot that we can do. But at the same time, I want to hear from them. Are they worried? How's this going to impact them? Because we're 11,000 strong here, and we don't have a lot of employment here. And if any of our industries is going to be touched by the federal government's decision making, I'd like to hear from them, and I'd like to let them know we're working closely with them to see what we can help do. I noticed in one of the reports that the HVAC is not working at Cook's Corner, and it sounds like there's some stopgap solutions in place. Matt, can you tell me, is it at all our responsibility, or is that the school board's decision as to what they want to do there?
It's actually a county-owned building, and we've taken some initial steps to make sure that if we move forward, which we will need to move forward with putting out to bid the HVAC system at the Cook's Corner building, that we do so in such a way that it meets the DHCD requirements, so it can be coupled with our grant application. The board may recall we have $50,000 in the budget set aside for improvements to the Cook's Corner office complex and $250,000 for the Carter Gymnasium. The Carter Gymnasium is scheduled to have HVAC improvement, windows improvement, and roof improvement. Chances are we probably will not need all of the $250,000 for the Carter Gym. I think our initial quote we got on the roof was $50-something thousand, and we can move those pots of monies around. So if we bid out the HVAC in the gym, we can bid out the HVAC in Cook's Corner office complex along with it. Key is we make sure we include any language required by the state, so we've complied with grant requirements in anticipation that we will be awarded the grant. We're working with DHCD to make sure that we can go out for bid, or whether we have to wait. And we're taking steps initially, which Betty can speak to, and I think she has in her report, which apologies to Ms. Muncie, she did have a report that was going to piggyback with mine as Assistant County Administrator, so I should have slowed down a little bit and looked over and see if she had anything.
All there.
But we're going to make sure that if we bid it out, we do it in accordance with state requirements, so we meet all of that. We won't have to turn around and bid it out again to make sure we comply with grants.
So it is our body that is working on that.
Yes.
And I'm sure you can appreciate this because you all work in offices too, but it is 91 degrees out, and whatever you can do to push to keep that environment better than just, we can't refrigerate it with an ice cube is all I'll say.
Yes, sir. We have looked into portable chillers, I believe.
Good enough.
We're doing some intermediate steps that could tide us over.
I'm just adding pressure is all I'm meaning to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, she said. I've thought, this sounds silly, but having seen the price to fix 3 seals and maybe the signs at the entrances to the county, I love that it's our 350th anniversary, and I'm reading some of our history books and really trying to get up to speed on that. I just can't see spending the money on that, so I just want to go on the record that the next time we remodel, maybe that's the time that we consider changing the dates by 5 years on the signs. I just don't think it's worth over $1,000 to be right.
That was for those seals. I know we did get a quote in for adding something on the bottom.
Yeah, all I'm trying to say is if it helps for staff to know what 1 of 5 is thinking, this is what 1 of 5 is thinking. And I'm almost done. The St. Clair Walker MES solar project is going well. They have to be out of there by August 15th or else there's liquidated damages. They're well on pace. There's a shutdown coming this weekend. All the modules are installed. They've done a real hell of a job, and I hope to go out to some other counties and talk them up because if it saves us $50,000, it could save them $50,000, and frankly, I want a whole bunch of good rural education around here, not just us. Another thing that I did that was a new tradition apparently for us, not for Matthews or some others, but we had our graduating high school seniors come in their robes and caps through the elementary school while all the elementary school kids sat in the hallways clapping for them. I really like the messaging there, and I encourage you guys next year, and I'm sure Dr. Gretz will have it on one of these where he tells us about what's going on in the schools. Make a point of going to that. That just really reminds us of what we're doing here as a county. And I'd also just like to thank the chairman for letting me go long, and also for the great spot fishing that I had in Deltaville this morning.
I could use this. Mr. Jessup.
Well, I did attend their graduation. Dave Pryor did an excellent speech. He got the children involved, and he was short, straight to the point, and he did an excellent job on that. Middle Peninsula Alliance, that's going to be meeting next week, and also Ocean Festival Foundation, that'll start this week. That's it for me.
Very good. Mr. Mansfield.
I'd like to second what Wayne just said about what a great speech Dave Pryor made at graduation. I also attended a meeting, the Rappahannock River Basin Commission meeting, that Betty did an awful lot in making sure that they got the space at the Mariners Museum or at the museum, and it was a very good meeting. Had good discussions, including discussion of the SWIFT program from HRSD, and that, as we've talked about, is scheduled to go into effect in 2030. And going back to the purchasing, I really do thank everybody that put their effort into it. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you, sir. All righty. We did have our joint finance budget talks with the school board, which is just about a monthly thing now. And we continue to understand the needs of the schools, and they understand the limitations of our revenues, and we're able to work together. Had a very interesting meeting with the Virginia Department of Aviation officials in Richmond. As you know, Oscar Barber, who is a friend of aviation, has bought the property to the north of the airfield, and we have options for extending the present runway or a slight realignment, which will make it even longer and safer. It will not attract any bigger airplanes in here. It won't land jets. It's not going to cause more noise. It's not going to be a problem. It will just be a matter of safety, because if you dig back in the records and see what accidents we've had at that airport, it's primarily been due to a short runway or pilot error. And we can't do anything about pilot error, but we can do something about the safety of the facility. The Virginia Department of Aviation is in a position to fund up to 80% of a project that meets certain requirements, and safety gets a lot of points. That's the good news. The bad news is they only have about $3 million a year, but there's some shift around, and Matt helped me with my math. It was either, that pot now is either 6 or 9, if I remember.
I think it was 6. They're shifting monies around. It's going to become 9, if my memory serves, Mr. Chairman.
Long story short, this process could be 7 years plus, but if we don't get started on it, it'll be 7 years from whenever we get started on it. So I'm excited about the possibilities of making that airport safer, and there's all sorts of other possibilities with a shrewd business person owning the property around there that could well be a benefit to the county. And of course, Kathy and I were together at the meeting with Rob Whitman on the Norris Bridge, and I have to kind of say it tongue-in-cheek, but it's interesting how citizens who can benefit economically by a new bridge know more about bridge structure than VDOT does. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. Because those folks want regional cooperation. They might consider changing the way they tax their boats and do some other things if they want to, if they truly want to be economic friends with their surrounds. And that concludes my comments. And Madam County Attorney, I believe we need a motion to go into closed session.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. We need a motion from the board to convene in a closed session pursuant to the Code of Virginia, Section 2.2-3711A1, for the discussion of personnel matters regarding the county administrator and the county attorney, and pursuant to Virginia Code Sections 2.2-3711A3 and A8 for discussions and/or the consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose and for consultation with legal counsel.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, so ordered. Go ahead and call this public hearing to order by apologizing to our citizens. Things are, I guess, on the good side, they're very busy in Urbana at the eateries, and it took us longer to get a bite to eat because we've been in session since 3 o'clock this afternoon. So that having been said, let's go after the first ordinance amendment number 2018-001. David?
Mr. Chairman.
Right here.
Nope, I thought I put it
this up here. This is ordinance amendment 2018-001. Of course, it was initiated by the board. The application is for the purpose of amending all zoning districts by adding tourist homes to the permitted uses of the Middlesex County zoning ordinance as condition uses, subject to conditions contained within Article 15, which is the supplemental district regulations, which the new section would be 1529. And we would amend Article 22, Section 22-2 to add tourist homes to the definitions of the Middlesex County zoning ordinance. Of course, tourist homes would be added as a permitted use in the following districts. We picked every district that might possibly have a home in it. The only one we really left out of here was Conservation District. I don't think we have anything that's actually located in it. Of course, this is how the definition would read. A dwelling where lodging and meals are provided for compensation up to 5 sleeping rooms with a maximum of 14 persons, which are open to transients. Article 15, the supplementary district regulations as proposed. The purpose of supplementary district regulations is to set specific conditions for various uses, classifications of uses, or areas where problems are frequently encountered. These are the conditions that are being proposed for that particular use. I'm going to go through each use and kind of give a synopsis of how staff would probably deal with that particular condition that's being added. Condition number 1 is a zoning permit along with a site sketch that addresses requirements specified below shall be applied for and obtained prior to commencement of the use. At such time of application, the applicant/owner, property owner shall provide complete contact information of the party responsible for management of the use. If the management entity has changed or the use is discontinued, the Middlesex County Department of Planning shall be notified immediately. We're not going to make the applicants come in with a surveyed or an engineered site plan. This is a site sketch that they could provide. The property owner could produce this. It's not going to be a high-tech sketch. It's just something that indicates where they're going to be parking, how they're going to screen, and how the other properties may relate to it. It can be a very simple sketch, probably something that anybody can really produce. It doesn't have to be stamped or certified by an engineer surveyor. Condition number 2, adequate, and I'm going to go back to this. The one other thing is the notification for the planning department. That we will have a contact for that particular use. If things get unruly, we can always contact that particular person, and they can do what they can to try to bring it into compliance.
Dave, is that intended to kind of limit the tomfoolery that goes on?
Yes, Mr. Walker, that would help limit some of that tomfoolery. Number 2, adequate off-street parking shall be provided and demonstrated with application of the zoning permit and site sketch. 1 parking space for each sleeping room shall be provided and shall not be located in the required front yard except within an existing driveway. On-street parking shall not be utilized to meet the requirements of this section. Let me elaborate on this. There's some homes, I think the purpose of this is to prohibit somebody from building a parking lot in their front yard. I can think of many neighborhoods where these are small homes. White Point comes into mind, or Tank Shores. People come in, there's hardly any front yard. Currently, they're parking in the front yard. They pull 2 cars in the grass. If they can indicate that that's what they've been doing for years, then that's sufficient. Obviously, we can't make them build we don't want them to build parking lots. We want this to resemble we want it to monolithically look like it's looked for years. We don't want to create something new. So there's a lot of, staff will look at each sketch and they'll know the properties, or go out to the properties, and we'll be able to have some latitude with helping the applicants with meeting this requirement.
But Dave, you're not saying that here.
What we're saying, they can, as long as it's in an existing driveway, they can park there. So many people may consider like I said, White Point and Tank Shores come to mind, where the yards are so short And if they've been pulling, when the families come down and they pull 2, 3 cars in the front yard in the grass, and if they can indicate that's where they've been parking, they're not creating any new parking, and they're in what I would consider the existing driveway, because that's what they're using for a driveway, is basically their lawn. So we're given, the purpose of this is to prohibit somebody from building some type of parking lot in their front yard other than behind the setback to accommodate extra parking for a more intense use. It kind of prohibits what it does is it places that within the confines of what it's always been, with nothing new. So, because the home, if the property's that small, it's going to be limited by the size of it anyway. So they're going to have limited parking, limited size home, and they're going to be limited to what they've been doing all along. What maybe a family's been using it. It's a 2-bedroom home, so they pull 2 cars in the front yard. That would meet the parking requirement. What they're saying is the parking, what we're saying here is that is the driveway. And that's a decision that there's a lot in this ordinance that's up to the discretion of the planning director. And the planning director has to make that call for that, whether or not that's the existing parking lot or whether somebody's trying to create new parking within the front setback. Does that help explain any of that for you?
Yeah, I tend to think that it needs to be spelled out a little bit better, that if it has been done in the past on a routine basis, you certainly will continue. But you're not saying that here.
Well, it says existing driveway, and if existing driveway includes pulling off into the grass, then they're basically grandfathered.
Right. And White Point's a perfect example. I mean, the homes are so close to the road, there's barely enough room. The homes are located well within the front setback, and there's really no room to create anything in the back, because that's RPA. So they're basically, when the families come down, they park in the 2, 3 spots in front of the lawn. So the purpose of this is to give some latitude to the planning director to look at things and say, this makes sense, that they've been parking here for years, they're going to have the same number of cars. Okay, that suffices. This is item number 3. This deals with screening requirements. They shall be subject to the provisions of section 15 of this ordinance and shall apply to all zoning districts. This requirement may be reduced or waived if agreed to in writing by the owner of the adjoining property, or if in the opinion of and at the discretion of the planning director, the screening is detrimental to adjoining property. The requirement may be waived or modified to accommodate site conditions. There again, a lot is being placed on the planning director. I think what this particular section does, and the board members will probably agree, the board entertains a lot of basically neighbors not getting along. And a lot of it stems from lack of communication. And I think what this does is right off the bat, it makes the property owners communicate with each other. They can start communicating. You open up that line of communication, and there's some assurances that can be made within some of that communication, and it gives some of that, it actually places some of the onus of some of that on the actual applicant. What the second part of it does is if they can't agree, and you have a property owner that's just being obstinate and not, just wants to make it hard on a property, not on their adjoining property owner, staff can come in and basically do what makes sense. Maybe a little screening. You might not want to screen all the way to the water because you might block somebody's view. So there's a lot of latitude that can be introduced into this, and really it's up to the planning director to do what makes sense. In fact, if you had a 20-acre parcel, would it make sense to make the man fence 20 acres to screen a use? No. We're going to step in and say, no, that doesn't make any sense. We're not going to make you do that. So, and number 4, the use shall not generate any additional noise, light, or traffic than would usually be present or associated with adjoining properties or other properties in the zoning district. So basically, means what it says. I mean, the use is supposed to look like it's all, it's been a home, it's been a little cottage for years. It's supposed to look like a cottage. It's not supposed to look like have the appearance of some type of new high-intensity use. It's supposed to look like a residential use with people living in it for, although a shorter period of time.
Can't put out one of those neon vacancy, no vacancies.
Right, exactly. It's supposed to have the appearance of a residential neighborhood or wherever they're at. So, and some of these may be in business districts that may allow something, but the district itself allows itself more of that latitude. So the district will regulate how it would be used. Of course, here's the screening requirements. Basically, it's just calling for a decorative wooden fence, which is probably needs to be updated because people use other means. There's a lot of vinyl fences that look better, but of course, common sense would say we allow substitution. A little background, of course, the board adopted the transient occupancy tax ordinance, or what we may commonly refer to as the lodging tax. Of course, during that process, the board was advised by staff that there were deficiencies in the zoning ordinance, and it may prohibit certain potential uses that may be subject to the tax ordinance. In response to this deficiency, the board on May 1st initiated an ordinance amendment requesting the addition of these types of uses into the zoning ordinance. Currently, the zoning ordinance allows bed and breakfasts in most zoning districts. The ordinance does not, however, enable short-term or vacation rentals that have sprung up and evolved in recent years. These are similar uses, with the exception being the lack of a residing property owner in the situation of a short-term rental. On May 16th, the Ordinance Committee met to review draft language for the text amendment addition. Staff provided a draft of the ordinance language along with the definitions and ordinance language from the localities that recently adopted similar uses into their ordinance. Definition language similar in most localities, with most localities selecting tourist homes as the use term. Staff and the committee agreed that making the use a special exception may overburden the commission and the board with excessive number of requests. It was also the consensus with the group that allowing the use as a permitted use without any restrictions may have negative impacts on adjoining property owners. To strike a balance, it was agreed upon that the use would be acceptable as a permitted use as long as it had reasonable conditions and limitations placed on it. Pursuant to that determination, it was decided that a new section would be added to Article 15 and addresses property owner concerns. Staff recommends, staff recommends approval of Ordinance Amendment 2018-01 as submitted, Mr. Chairman and Board.
Thank you, David. Does anybody have any questions of David before the public comment? Hearing none, we'll have public comment and then may have some things to ask you after that.
Yes, sir.
At this point, I'd like to open the public comment period. If we have any citizens that would like to speak to the board on this issue, please come forward. State your name and address. And tell us what's on your mind.
How are y'all doing? My name's Dennis Durrett. I live in Urbana, Virginia, 431 Knapp Street. I just want to make a few comments because this is a situation where, in fact, we used to rent a condo at Jackson Creek back in the 1980s before we moved here. And, the new ordinance, I think, including these houses, cottages, many of which have been rented for generations here in the county. I mean, so you're rolling in some properties that, have a long history of rentals and with little or no regulation, and to my knowledge, probably minimal issues. Not that you can't have them, but I think that the people that own them have to manage them and make sure that things do, or people do act, properly. I think you have to be very careful, again, that what additional cost and regulation are you going to impose on these private property owners? Because most of these rentals that you're talking about are by and large private, not business entities. So they're, a family owns a cottage, maybe it's inherited, maybe it wasn't, who knows? And it probably rents more during the summer months than you're really looking at year-round, even though short-term. the short-term rental market has, blossomed. I mean, you've got, everybody calls it Airbnb. That's like Kleenex and Coca-Cola. I mean, you've got Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, FlipKey. You got a whole bunch of them out there, and probably more that I didn't even mention. And many of the traditional bed and breakfast owners, they now have embraced these mediums to rent their places because they have more exposure through the internet versus just trying to rent themselves through word of mouth or other means. One thing I will mention too, of course, you're talking up here screening from a physical perspective. One thing I do know, a lot of these short-term rental mediums through the internet, they also screen renters and the people that own the properties, where a renter has to give a picture, ID, driver's license, whatever they have on file if you're going to be renting through their website or medium. That way, I think, gives some protection. I don't know to what degree of background check. Yes, sir.
Dennis, I was remiss in reminding everyone that there is a 3-minute time limit.
Okay.
Comment. So we just got the initial warning, and since you weren't warned, we'll give you a little latitude.
That's fine. I won't be much longer anyway. But anyway, so that's there, which I think is good because, there've got to be some aspects of making sure you've got quality people and people that don't have, ulterior motives and things of that sort. I do think these short-term rentals, whether it's a whole house or someone's renting a room out or whatever, they provide a positive economic impact for Middlesex County. And, really Middlesex has a scarcity or a lack of places to stay, and I don't think the county's got the density or the available business that they're going to bring in a Holiday Inn or a Hampton Inn or whatever else at this point. And so a lot of people, they're going to stay in Gloucester, Tappahannock, or, find something like what we've been talking about. So anyway, I just wanted to share those comments, and I think it's good at least that it's on your radar screen.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I see one other possibility for public comment back there. Would you like to address us? All right, newspaper doesn't want to address us, so I'll declare the public comment period closed. At this point, if anyone has any questions of Dave and his group's recommendation for passing this.
Yeah, Dave, yeah. Come on up. My question is, okay, what are, for example, let me tell you what I'm thinking about. People are renting these out, having parties and different things like that. I hear some wild stories in Richmond, Hanover, and different other areas. I know we're not like that, but that's something that, I know we probably can't control because the owner probably have more control of who they screen, just like Mr. Direct said.
Right.
But, what would be in place for something like for someone maybe throwing a big party, and say for example, rural areas. Okay, up in my end of Canada, we got a lot of homes that somebody might want to rent it out at a Airbnb or whatever,
Right.
whatever it is. But like I said, you have a lot of land, and you're not close up beside another neighbor.
Well, and to your point, I think what we have is an ordinance presented that's probably not perfect.
Right.
And to try to strike a balance somewhere between what Mr. Durrett was saying and what we have here, we're trying to, we have that condition in there where we have a contact person. And if somebody's misbehaving or tomfoolery or whatever, however you want to put it, there's something going on. We do have that contact person. We can contact them. And if it's out of character for the neighborhood, I mean, we have that fourth condition where it needs to be, harmonious and the same as the neighborhood would usually look. So I think we have some way to try to step in and say, if you're continually doing this, we can step in and do it. The screening may help some, and this is, we're taking one ordinance and we're trying to spread it through the whole county, and like Mr. Durrett said, this has been going on for years, but most of it's been kind of an underground kind of, like I know this guy and you know this guy and the guy lets, it hasn't been as, but now we have the Airbnbs and the internet's opened it up worldwide, really. So we're trying to strike a balance. I don't know that it's perfect, but we do have some things in there to have a little bite where we could go and contact that owner and tell them that this is not consistent with what you've agreed to when you signed your zoning permit. And if it continues, we can take action against you. So,
I think the sheriff's office too, if it rises to a level of which it's a public nuisance.
yeah, if it rises to the level of a nuisance, obviously that's a police matter. But there's a little bit in there for zoning too.
Dave, have you had any contact with the town of Urbana?
No, I have not. Their zoning district's a little bit different. I don't know if they went through this or not. I don't believe they did. I think they found it. They initiated the tax on it, but I don't know if their planning department or zoning departments looked at it for use. They're separate from us as far as zoning goes. So they're their own.
This doesn't really impact?
Not the town of Urbana. Not the town of Urbana. They have their own zoning ordinance, so it would not impact them. That's right.
It's my understanding they're kind of looking to see how the county deals with it, and they may follow suit with some similar type of ordinance for themselves.
Because if we weren't interested in the potential revenue from the lodging tax, we'd probably just leave it the way it's always been.
And the town of Urbana may very well decide to do that very thing too. They may just leave it alone.
What about the Bethpage and?
That page would be under the
That
ordinance.
would be under our ordinance, yeah. Which, if you think about it, Bethpage is going to police their own site. That you can pretty much rest assured that they're going to police that site themselves.
But we can't go into Bethpage and tell them they need to put in screening between each building.
No, we're not. That's where that part of the ordinance comes in, where common sense is injected in.
Well, and if I may help you out, Dave, it's a completely different scenario because they're a campground with approved lodging units already as a campground.
Right.
They do not meet our definition of a tourist home being rented.
Yeah.
Any other questions of our planning director? Lady and gentlemen, what is your pleasure? Chair will entertain a motion to approve the ordinance. Kick that roll down the road.
Right. I'll move it.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Oh, second the motion?
Motion duly
Chairman?
seconded. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. So ordered. And I believe now you're just for this report only, you're going to tell us about the proposed wastewater and water supply system.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. There's no action required for this particular item. This is state code our ordinance, Article 19, Section 19.3, and state code, Section 15.2.2232, require that the Planning Commission ensure that any proposed public facilities or utilities are in accordance with the comprehensive plan. If you remember, we had this for the solar farm that we did out on Bob's Hole Road. In this case, this has been vetted out pretty well through the public. We felt no necessity to run it through a public hearing in the Planning Commission side. Planning Commission, Mr. Walker presented a nice presentation to the Planning Commission showing the service areas, which align perfectly with our future land use map, where future land use would be more intense, not in areas that would be considered agricultural, that would create sprawl. So in that respect, it was it was in compliance with the future land use plan. You can see that the planning included the Planning Commission staff reports, and you can see that there was a lot of information and a lot of supporting the goals and objectives are basically saying you have to do this. There's so much compelling evidence in the comprehensive plan that supports these two projects that it really is a pretty easy decision. So anyway, the Planning Commission did recommend unanimously that with one member missing, that they're compliant with the comp plan. And that this is that official transmittal to the board that satisfies state code. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, David.
Yes, sir.
And I have on my agenda that we have another session of public comment. Is that? So we will once again open our meeting to public comment. We have two possibilities, and neither one of them are coming forward, so I'm going to assume that we can close the public comment. And if there be no further business to come before this hearing, the chair will entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll second it.
You'll second it? Who's going first then?
I will first.
All right. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Those opposed, no. Same sign.
Y'all have a great 4th of July, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You too, Mr. Walker.